Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Underworld Kings, The Rise and Fall from Light Not Studios. You know, I was walking through the West Village the other day, past these beautiful, ornate brownstones, and it got me thinking about facades. The elegant front we present to the world, and what might be happening just behind the door. That idea, that disconnect, is at the heart of one of Victorian London's most chilling true crime stories. It's a tale not of a lone, monstrous killer, but of an entire network, a sisterhood of poison. And it terrorized a city that believed women were, above all else, the gentle angels of the home. So, picture London in the 1840s and 50s. It's the height of the Victorian era. Morality is strict, appearances are everything, and for women, especially of a certain class, options are brutally limited. You marry, you manage a household, you depend entirely on your husband's goodwill and his purse. Now, imagine a woman trapped in a miserable marriage, or a servant girl pregnant and ruined, or a wife watching her family's money slip away through her husband's gambling or drink. The despair must have been a palpable, quiet thing. And into this quiet despair stepped a shadowy figure, a woman who offered a very final, very discreet solution. Her name was Sarah Chesham, but they called her Sally Arsenic. And she is our first window into this poison ring. Sarah was an agricultural laborer's wife from a small village in Essex, a world away from the London fog. But her methods would become the blueprint. In 1847, she was tried for poisoning her husband, Richard, with arsenic. She was acquitted for lack of evidence. But the whispers didn't stop. Because arsenic was the perfect weapon of its age. It was cheap, available everywhere, sold as rat poison, as a cosmetic, even as a medicine in tiny doses. Its symptoms, violent vomiting, cramping, profound thirst, mimicked cholera and gastritis, which were rampant. And for women, who were constantly preparing food and tea, administering tonics to their sick families, the opportunity was always there. Sarah Chesham's story gets darker. She was eventually hanged in 1851, not for her husband's death, but for the murder of her lover's two sons. But here's the crucial point. During her trials, testimony suggested she wasn't acting alone. She was advising other women. She was a source of knowledge. She was, in essence, a node in a network. And this is where the story moves from a rural tragedy to a metropolitan panic. Because London had its own, far more sophisticated poison ring. This leads us to the woman who would become the queen of this dark trade. Her name was Mary Cotton. Now, Mary wasn't in London proper. She operated in the industrial north of England. But her legend fed directly into the capital's fears, and she exemplifies the pattern. A serial poisoner of breathtaking scope, she is believed to have killed up to 21 people, including 3 husbands, a lover, and her own children. Her motive? Small insurance policies and the freedom to move on. Mary proved how effective, how tragically simple, this method could be for a woman with no other means of control over her destiny. And Londoners reading the sensational reports in their newspapers started to look sideways at their neighbors, at the sudden, convenient illnesses that seemed to plague certain households. Because in London, the network became organized. It moved beyond lone operators like Sally Arsenic or Mary Cotton. According to the panic that swept through the press and the public, there were women, midwives, herbalists, fortune tellers, even respected married ladies, who knew the secrets. They could procure the arsenic. They could advise on the dosage. They could provide alibis or sympathetic diagnoses. They operated in whispers in back kitchens, in consultations after church. This was the true terror for Victorian society, the idea that the very heart of the home, the woman entrusted with the family's health and comfort, could be its destroyer. And worse, that she might have accomplices, that there was a secret guild of murderesses. The law finally took drastic action, not because of a single brilliant detective, but because of public hysteria. The Arsenic Act of 1851 was a direct response to these poison rings. For the first time, the sale of arsenic was heavily regulated. It had to be mixed with soot or indigo to make it less like flour or sugar. Buyers had to be recorded in a register, state their purpose, and be known to the seller. This was a landmark moment. The British government legislating specifically to curb a murder trend. And it worked. Poisoning by arsenic plummeted. The act didn't just make it harder to get the poison. It sent a thunderously clear message that the authorities were watching. The facade of the innocent household purchase was shattered. Now, as an engineer, I'm fascinated by systems. And this poison ring was a morbid, horrific system. It emerged from a specific set of social conditions: the absolute economic dependency of women, the lack of legal recourse like divorce, the availability of the tool, and the perfect camouflage of common diseases. It was a brutal, problem-solving network. These women weren't the cartoonish villains of later sensational fiction. They were, in many cases, desperate people using the only means of agency they could find in a society that gave them none. That doesn't excuse the murder of children and innocent spouses, not at all. But it forces us to look beyond the simple label of evil and see the rotten architecture of the world that created this phenomenon. It makes me think about the systems we live within today. What pressures do they create? What desperate, unthinkable solutions might they inadvertently encourage? The Victorian poison ring is a dark mirror, reflecting back the consequences of trapping people, of leaving them no good options. It's a story about crime, yes, but it's also a story about power, gender, and the terrifying lengths a human being will go to change their circumstances. So the next time you walk past a beautiful old building, one that speaks of order and tradition, remember the stories its walls might have held. Remember that terror once had a very specific taste, and it was mixed into a cup of tea by a steady hand. The poison ring showed London and the world that the greatest threats sometimes don't lurk in the alleyways. They can flourish right in the heart of the home, in the silent spaces between what society demands and what a person can endure. Thanks for listening to this episode of Underworld Kings. If this story of hidden networks and historical fear resonated with you, please do share the show with someone else who loves diving into the darker corners of history. For more deep dives into the rises and falls of history's most fascinating criminal empires, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Abnul J. Farabi. This has been a production of Light Not Studios. Visit us at https://www.lightnotstudios.com. Until next time, take care.